Welcome to this video. This is the first episode, the first part of a new series that is starting on the channel. And this series is called Chess Openings Uncovered. The first episode here deals with the Sicilian Najdorf, the arguably most popular opening or line in chess. This is why I picked it. It's one of the most popular. But first, a couple of words about this series. This series will feature regularly various openings or opening lines. And the idea is to give some introduction to this line, this opening, explain why it is played and why exactly this line is played and not something else. So it's an explanation of the finer points of openings in regards of what lines are possible in these openings and what are the ideas behind exactly this line. So this will serve as an introduction and an overview about various lines, and it won't be a repertoire or very detailed examination, but rather an introduction and overview as mentioned. So if you want to look at some line or opening that you don't know, you want to learn something about, some introduction, then those videos will be the exact thing to look for. Of course, it will start with one line, but it will grow to be some kind of overview about lots of lines in the future. So we start with the Najdorf. Of course, the Najdorf is a sub-variation of the Sicilian, which arises here on move 5, with black playing the move a6. I'm not sure if I should actually flip the board from black's point of view, but I still think I'll keep this usual white side view, because during the series it will be all kinds of openings, also openings that actually white goes for. So I keep it that way. It's also not meant to be to show a certain perspective or to be biased towards a color. It's just a general overview. So why does black play a6 in this position? What is the idea of this specific opening line? It's very helpful to compare the Najdorf to some other lines which are arguably related, and these are on move 5 here, the classical Sicilian with knight c6, and the Scaveningan line with e6. Both are closely related to the Najdorf, but with the a6 move, black actually retains the maximum flexibility. And this is really the key word about the Najdorf. It is very flexible, and this is, I think, also the main reason for its popularity through, I don't know, the last about 60 years since Miguel Najdorf made it popular, beginning of the 50s, and then it was of course Bobby Fischer's favorite defense. After that, Kasparov's, and it's of course still played by today's stars like Vishy Anand or Magnus Carlsen, Nakamura. They all play it. Okay, why is a6 a flexible move? a6 is flexible in regards to the knight on b8. Black doesn't move the knight early, and actually can later choose which square it's really the correct one for the knight. Very often, in fact, the d7 square is the better square compared to c6. Why is d7 sometimes the better square? This is mostly because from d7 the knight fulfills very useful functions. It gives some support to his colleague on f6. So if this is exchanged, for instance, by a bishop or pinned, then black has a natural piece on d7 to recapture. The d7 knight also has ideas. I think I'll get rid of the arrows and draw new ones. It has ideas to go to c5 and attack e4. or to participate in the queenside offensive via b6. Also on d7 it is nearer to the d5 square. Why is this important? Yeah, because black sometimes plays the move e7, e5, and this is the second point in which the Najdorf is very flexible, and this is in regards to the e-pawn. It doesn't decide early if you want to play e6 or if you maybe want to play e5. So black is flexible in this regard as well. This very clearly shows if white plays bishop e2, bishop e3, f4, or a4, those kind of moves. After all these moves, and this also of course applies to g3, basically all moves besides bishop g5. On all other moves, black actually has the choice to play e6 or e5. So let's say I play bishop e2 for white to prepare castling, the classical line here favored by Karpov and Geller. Black can play e5, which stays within the Najdorf nomenclature, or you can play e6 and transpose to a Scaveningan setup with a small center. So the choice is still open after bishop e2. The same applies for bishop e3, where black can play e6, going for a Scaveningan small center setup, or play e5 to get this kind of structure. And exactly this kind of structure is where the knight on b8 is perfectly placed, because you can set up this kind of configuration where the knight on d7 is simply nearer to the critical d5 square. If you imagine black would play knight c6 here, this knight absolutely doesn't control d5, and the only way it can directly influence d5 would be to go to e7 at some point, and this is very unnatural because it's simply the place for black's king's bishop. So the knight is simply better on d7, and this is true for lots of setups where the d7 knight is simply better placed than the c6 knight. Obviously this is a huge the main point of the Najdorf in comparison to the classical Sicilian, where black immediately puts the knight on c6. Funny enough, in the classical Sicilian there are lines. I can show you one. Bishop e2, e5, knight drops back, bishop e7, castles, rook e1. Just a sample line. Okay, I forgot h6, which is normal, bishop f1. This kind of position, in this kind of line, actually black's best setup involves, believe it or not, knight to b8 to regroup the knight to d7. In fact, black can play like this because the position is relatively closed, but this shows that the knight really doesn't belong on c6 in this kind of structure. This is the difference to the Sveshnikov. The knight is on c6 in the Sveshnikov, but in the Sveshnikov this is all nil and void because white loses so much time with the knight maneuver. Okay, so let's drop back to the initial Najdorf position. The knight position is 1 point and the pawn position is 1 point. You could ask, in this position where black plays a6, if this is true, why not play knight to d7 immediately? In fact, it's maybe not a terrible move, but it allows things like an immediate g4, for example, as this bishop is not on g4 anymore. And here white maybe chooses a setup where the knight isn't perfectly placed. This is, after all, the great flexibility of the Najdorf, that you can actually put the knight on c6 if you think it's a good idea. There are many lines where the knight is perfectly alright on c6. Let's say a6, bishop e2, e6, this kind of line, where black at some point will put the knight on c6. It's simply the best square. Has ideas to maybe exchange it, go here at some point, or support e5. So you can put the knight to c6 if you think it's all right, but in some setups knight e7 is simply the better move, and you're flexible enough to play it. I mentioned that black has this choice of the e-pawn. He doesn't have the choice really against bishop g5, which is traditionally the sharpest approach. Here e5 in fact isn't so great. The reason being that white can immediately capture, and black doesn't want to lose so many moves here with the queen. And white, in contrast to the Sveshnikov, doesn't have a knight here. He could actually go here, for example, and enjoys two very strong knights. So e5 is basically never played. But what black could do here, for example, is knight bd7, showing that this can be a good place for the knight. So if white would capture, you can easily recapture with the knight. Of course, the main move is e6 here. And after f4, black has a wide choice. He can again put the knight here, or bishop e7, or I can even play b5, the super sharp Polgajewski variation, where you don't develop this piece at all, but immediately go for b5, which of course the b5 advance is naturally one key point of a6. It prepares the b5 counterplay. So a6 is a very useful, if you want, waiting move. It waits until white commits to something, and then black wants to react accordingly. White has a really astounding amount of moves, which shows that it's a tough nut to crack. White has basically played maybe all kinds of moves, which everything which doesn't blunder pieces or pawns has been tried. Even weird looking moves, really, like queen f3 have been played by Nigel Short, even preparing long castling. Moves like h3 are not bad with the idea of g4. So white has a really huge choice. One thing, black even can try to make this setup look a bit like a dragon with g6. These are very rare occurrences, but it's possible. For example, after a move like f4, black can play a setup like this: queen c7, let's say bishop here, knight here, a4, this kind of setup. Here black can even play g6, and you can set up a dragon-like position with the bishop on g7. It's that flexible. Can even return to that, and the dragon a6 is rather often sensible move. It's as mentioned, very flexible. The Scaveningan e6 immediately, of course, if you compare it, you really early commit yourself to this pawn structure. You don't play e5. But the Scaveningan also has one very serious drawback, and this is the Keres attack with g4, which still enjoys a very fearsome reputation. In fact, Garry Kasparov, who's of course together with Fischer, of course the most legendary Najdorf player, he started out as a Scaveningan player, but he simply didn't want to allow the Keres attack, so he played a6 all the time. All the time later in his career. He allowed a couple of Keres attacks in the late 70s, but when he got close to the World Championship stage, he almost always played the Najdorf and didn't allow the Keres attack. He only allowed the Keres attack once against Karpov, and after that always played the Najdorf. So this obviously prevents g4 as the pawn is hanging. This is also, by the way, the explanation of the move h3. White really wants to play g4. So after e6, he plays some sort of little Keres attack with the h-pawn. Wasting, it's not the tempo waste, but it's a little bit of a slower form of Keres attack. So let's briefly check White's main moves here to get the overview completed. The sharpest move probably is bishop g5, with the general idea to build a setup like this. I'll make a couple of moves. This is White's ideal formation. He wants to quickly castle queenside, and ideally would like to follow up with g4, h4 as a possible plan, or he could go bishop d3 and rook h2, e1 for total centralization. These kind of lines are super sharp and lead to absolutely double-edged play. There are all kinds of setups possible for black. You can play with the queen c7 castles. You can play the setup without bishop e7 even. So what I'm talking about is this kind of stuff. Knight b2, d7, queen f3, queen c7, long castles b5. And it's a very, very sharp game. Even this is probably not a correct line, but it's absolutely crazy stuff where pieces are sacrificed and in all kinds of situations. So bishop g5 is really the kind of surf and volley approach, where White really wants to wipe out black quickly. It can be answered by various setups, as mentioned. One setup that really needs to be mentioned is the notorious poison pawn, which with queen b6, where black instantly attacks b2 and tries to irritate White with this. The main line, of course, is that White simply sacrifices the pawn, and we get something like this, where theory really easily can last to move 30 and on. Here White has all kinds of moves, e5, f5, and so on. It's really amazingly complicated. In fact, this is maybe still the main line of bishop g5, but it's obviously very demanding from both sides, and you really it's very theory heavy. You cannot play this at the board and calculate everything. You need to simply know the lines. So the Najdorf is not really an opening in some lines, which really is something that you can just play by understanding the position. You really need to know the lines. Bishop g5 is, as mentioned, the sharpest. Another very popular line is bishop e3, and this can easily lead to the formation which is now widely known as the English attack, where White plays f3, g4, queen d2, long castles. This is the general setup that White almost disregarding what black plays, White will play this. Let's say e6, f3, bishop e7, g4, okay, queen d2, something like this. I don't mind, it's maybe not the most exact moves, but this is White's setup. The pawns here, long castle, and then it's a pawn storm. This can be a very effective attacking weapon, and can also be used if black plays e5. You drop the knight back, and then you have the same kind of setup. Let's say something like this, and White is basically doing the same as he is doing against e6. This is a very good choice for aggressive players. It's still it's still not a line that you can play without any concrete knowledge. It's very sharp. Black has additional options though. He can, besides e6 and e5, he can also play the funny move knight to g4 immediately. Oops, not f3. immediately attacking this bishop, and this leads to very unusual looking positions. This was a favorite of Kasparov's actually. He played some very nice games against this. For example, against Shirov, he had a very nice win. But also he won against Arnand and all kinds of players. Yeah, there's a related line here, f3, which tries to set up the English attack without allowing knight to g4, and it can easily transpose. But black has some additional options like knight c6 with some specific ideas, or he can play irritating moves like this to sort of attack b2 before it is even undefended. But now white cannot play bishop to e3. So this is a related line. These are the bishop moves and lines related to early bishop development of c1 bishop. Another idea is, of course, Fischer's move, bishop c4, which is sometimes even called the Fischer variation. And against this, there's also a very good illustration of black's flexibility. Here, black usually starts e6, white goes here, and now black has all kinds of setups available. He can let the knight, he can let it stay on b8 and just continue with quick play against e4 with bishop b7 attacking e4, and this knight won't move early. He can after bishop b3, he can go knight d7 with the idea of knight c5 and exchanging the bishop. Or I can also play this one, simply transposing to the classical Sicilian, where you would have played knight c5 on move 5 and after this only play e6 and a6. And this is really the beauty of the Najdorf. You're very flexible, and if you know the general outline of some variation, you can easily change lines within this whole kind of concept. Bishop c4 is a possibility, as mentioned. Very often it's played with short castle. It's not played with long castle. For example, something like this. It's a typical line with white threatening e5. Fischer actually played this usually with f4, not with queen f3. He also played queen f3 once or twice, but this is the old treatment with f4, and the modern treatment it was with queen f3. This is also how Kasparov and Nigel Short played this bishop c4 line. It's still very viable for white, bishop c4. The maybe most positional strategical line is bishop e2 here, favored by Karpov and as mentioned by Yefim Geller, who's really the godfather of this line, bishop e2. And here white simply admits in a way that I cannot refute black's setup, which he's really trying to do with bishop g5. Bishop g5 is really an attempt at to overrun black. With bishop b2 you sort of say, okay, I know you're playing a good solid opening, I'll just develop my pieces. And very often it looks something like this. Let's say for the Scaveningan, it's a very harmonious setup for white. He develops all his pieces on good squares where they influence the center, and you only later try to start direct operations. It can get very sharp later, but it's not a sharp clash right in the first couple of moves. White, for example, can later play stuff like king h1 and then g4, g5, which is at times rather dangerous for black. But he can also go for piece play like queen e1 to g3, rook d3, rook d1, bishop d3, and then e5. This kind of stuff, playing with pieces in the center. Of course, as mentioned, black is flexible on bishop e2. He can also play e5, and we have now a different kind of scenario where black has the pawn on e5 and therefore weakened the d5 square. And here white has entirely different kind of strategy. He can play to exploit the d5 square. He can still play f4, attacking the center. It's rather flexible. This bishop e2 system can be recommended to players who don't really want to learn super deep, super sharp theoretical lines, but you just want to play, a game of chess based on solid positional factors. It's not without a drop of poison. If you know your stuff, you can, I think, score pretty heavily with this, but you need to know what you're doing, and also show some patience sometimes in the coming middle games. So this is more of a middle game oriented move. It's not the move where you can try to wipe black off the board. What else can white play? He can play the move f4, which is also not bad. And again, black has a huge choice of viable moves. He can play e5 again, to which white usually retreats to f3, which was one of the ideas of f4, to get this knight behind the pawn and now put pressure on e5. This is perfectly alright for black. He will most likely continue like this. Or black can play e6, again transposing to this Scaveningan setup. Or black can play a sort of flexible game with, as I showed earlier, with g6. f4 is a bit of a forgotten line. It's not played that often, but it's certainly perfectly okay for white. Maybe a good surprise weapon if you're looking for something which is not new, but well forgotten. And there's what else is there? There's a4. a4 is not a bad move at all. a4 in fact is related to bishop e2. Very often they will transpose. If black plays e6 now, for example, white doesn't have much else than play bishop e2 and castle short. After a4 you pretty much tell black that you won't castle long, and therefore it very often transposes. So a4 is a sort of little stepson of bishop e2. And there are the somewhat weird lines. Not bad, but weird. White can go h3 with the idea of g4. This was actually also played by Fischer a couple of times, and it's not a bad move at all. Of course, as this doesn't threaten anything directly, black here is again very flexible. Can play e6, e5. I'm sorry, e6, e5, knight c6, or I can play even g6. I mean, everything's possible, but it leads to fresh positions, and therefore it can be an idea to play a move like h3. Also, there's g3. Also not bad. White simply plays bishop g2 and castles. It's a fairly solid continuation, and also can be recommended to players who don't want to study large amounts of sharp theory. Okay, when there's g3, there's always g4. Of course, immediately g4 loses his pawn, but white, believe it or not, also has tried the cool move rook g1, intending g4. It looks crazy, but it was used by Vasily Ivanchuk to beat Garry Kasparov once, so it needs to be taken seriously. In fact, if black completely ignores this and says, okay, I play e6, I don't mind, then g4 is really close to the normal Keres attack, as rook g1 is a very common move in the Keres. White will anyway play bishop e3, queen moves and long castles, and the rook is not wet on g1. So rook g1 is a bit crazy, but it's not bad at all. There's no clear refutation as far as I know. So also somewhat weird looking is this queen f3, but it has been played recently a couple of times. One idea actually is to prevent the e5 setups, as this would give white a very nice knight on f5. Yeah, this was the overview of the Najdorf. White has a huge choice of lines. If you play this as black or want to play this as black, you need to be aware that it's rather theory heavy opening. There are some lines you really should know. I mean, it's hard to play this over the board. This especially applies to bishop g5 and in some extent also to bishop e3. I think that after bishop e2, for example, a4, these somewhat slower moves, you can get away with sort of a couple of lines and a good general understanding. But against bishop g5, if you don't know your stuff, you will get wiped out against a player who's really prepared. I mean, if you watch my videos regularly, you know that I'm doing this e4, e5 for black repertoire series. I play e5 on e4, but I didn't play this all the time. I played the Najdorf also. It was my first serious opening that I played right at the junior, because I was a fan of Fischer's when I started, and therefore I needed to look at the Najdorf, and bishop g5 really was crazy even back then. And I still remember that I lost a blitz game when I played as an 18-year-old, I guess, against some player who simply played, I don't know how he did it, but he played like 25 moves of theory and mated me. I just forgot the line, and he spent like 1 minute in a blitz game. I don't know who this player was, it's so long ago, but it was really frustrating. You need to know your stuff. It's super sharp and impossible to get by after this with some I don't know, alibi lines, something you can sort of get by with. It's not possible. You need to learn one real line and stick to this. And it's obviously very sharp if you shy away from calculating complicated lines, and it's also not for you. In the other systems, you actually have some choice. After bishop g5, it's a bit tricky. Yeah, and for white players, if you want to play sharply, bishop g5 is the move to go, or bishop e3 if you want it a little bit toned down but still sharp. If you want a positional struggle, a long-term kind of game, I would recommend bishop e2 or maybe a4. These are similar. So even g3 is not bad at all. I mean, it's something you really can consider. With e5, you have some ideas playing on the queen side, and after e6, bishop g2, castles, you can even get some kingside attack later with g4. So lots of possibilities here. Yeah, that's the Najdorf. I hope you enjoyed this introduction to this fascinating opening, and I'll be preparing new episodes of this series. And it's also welcome. I'm also very open to suggestions, which kind of opening or line I should present. All right, I just got a Skype call. I need to switch this off next time. Yeah, thanks for watching, and talk to you soon.